When you think of Storage Wars, certain faces instantly come to mind. The series, which premiered in 2010, quickly became one of the most addictive reality shows on television. It wasn't just about old storage lockers and the junk, or treasures hidden inside. It was about the personalities, the rivalries, and the drama that unfolded with every raised hand during the tense bidding wars. Among those personalities, Jarrod Schulz carved out a unique space for himself. To some, he was the bold risk-taker, always willing to gamble on lockers that others dismissed. To others, he was the hotheaded wildcard whose temper and stubbornness made for unforgettable TV. And to millions of viewers, he became simply Jarrod, one half of the fiery duo alongside his partner, Brandi Passante. But who was Jarrod Schulz before the cameras rolled? And how did he rise from relative obscurity to become one of reality TV's most recognizable and controversial figures? To understand what later happened to him, we first need to rewind and trace the arc of his journey, a life before the spotlight. Long before television fame, Jarrod was not a household name. He was an ordinary man with ordinary struggles, hustling to make a living in Southern California. He worked various jobs, including stints in sales and business ventures, but financial security always seemed elusive. Like many, he was searching for stability, a way to build something of his own. That something turned out to be secondhand goods. Jarrod had an eye for spotting value in what others overlooked. He began dipping into the world of buying storage lockers, flipping items, and reselling them for profit. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. And, more importantly, it was an industry with endless potential for someone willing to take risks. This hustle eventually led him to open a thrift store with Brandi Passante, his longtime partner in both business and life. Together, they ran, Now and Then, a shop that became the base of their operations. It was here that Jarrod began honing the skills that would later make him stand out on television: sharp instincts, quick decisions, and a fearless willingness to gamble big. Enter Storage Wars. In 2010, A&E launched Storage Wars, a series that followed auctioneers and bidders as they fought for abandoned storage lockers, each hoping to uncover hidden treasures worth far more than their bids. The premise was simple, but the execution was addictive. Every locker was a mystery, every bid carried tension, and every cast member brought their own flavor of drama. For Jarrod and Brandi, this was a golden opportunity. As small business owners trying to build a future, the exposure meant free advertising for their store. But beyond that, the show gave them a platform to showcase their fiery personalities. From the start, Jarrod stood out. He wasn't the richest bidder. He couldn't throw money around the way some of the others did. But what he lacked in resources, he made up for in confidence. Jarrod was bold, often bidding aggressively, sometimes against logic, and sometimes just to prove a point. That recklessness often got him into trouble, but it also made him unpredictable, and unpredictability made for great television. The dynamic duo, Jarrod and Brandi. What truly made Jarrod a household name, however, was not just his own personality, but the chemistry he shared with Brandi. Together, they were the ultimate reality TV couple. Brandi was sharp, pragmatic, and cautious, the voice of reason. Jarrod was impulsive, fiery, and stubborn, the gambler. Their clashes over bidding decisions became one of the show's recurring highlights. When Jarrod pushed too far, Brandi was there to rein him in. When Brandi doubted, Jarrod was there to insist. Their back and forth dynamic created tension, comedy, and relatability all at once. Audiences loved it because it felt real. Unlike scripted drama, Jarrod and Brandi's interactions mirrored what countless couples experience in daily life: one partner cautious, the other bold, each pulling in opposite directions, but ultimately working toward the same goal. Their disagreements often erupted into arguments, but underneath it all was an undeniable chemistry that kept fans rooting for them. This balance of personalities gave Storage Wars much of its heart. Without the two of them, the show would have been just another competition series. With them, it became a study in relationships under pressure, and Jarrod's stubbornness became one of its central storylines. Fame, pressure, and opportunity. With fame came opportunity. Jarrod, once just another small business owner, was now recognized wherever he went. Fans approached him in public. Interviews and media appearances followed. The exposure brought more customers to their thrift store, boosting their income and expanding their brand. But fame also brought pressure. Being a reality TV star meant living under a microscope. Every decision, every argument, every mistake was captured on camera and broadcast to millions. For someone as hot-headed as Jarrod, this was a double-edged sword. His temper, once just a quirk, became a defining trait in the eyes of viewers. Still, Jarrod leaned into the persona. He wasn't interested in being polished or perfect. He was raw, authentic, and unapologetically himself. And while this won him fans, it also made him polarizing. Some loved his boldness. Others saw him as reckless, even abrasive. But that controversy only fueled the show's popularity. In reality television, love and hate are equally valuable. What matters is that people are watching. And people were definitely watching Jarrod Schulz, The Business of Storage Wars. Behind the scenes, Jarrod and Brandi continued to build their business empire. Their store, Now and Then, became a staple of their storyline, as viewers got a glimpse of how the items they bought at auctions were flipped for profit. This gave fans a sense of continuity. Every bid wasn't just about the gamble, it was about what came next. Jarrod's entrepreneurial drive was clear. He wasn't just in it for the thrill of the auctions. He wanted to turn storage hunting into a sustainable business. His vision was bigger than just one store. He saw opportunities in branding, in media appearances, and in expanding beyond the confines of the show. However, balancing television fame and business realities was never easy. Success in front of the camera didn't always translate to smooth sailing behind the scenes. Running a business is hard enough without the added pressure of being a public figure. Jarrod's ambition sometimes clashed with Brandi's caution, and while that tension was entertaining on screen, it was also very real in their day-to-day lives. Jarrod's persona, the villain and the gambler. Every reality show needs its villain, the person audiences love to hate. For Storage Wars, Jarrod often filled that role, whether intentionally or not. His sharp tongue, quick temper, and stubborn bidding style made him the perfect foil to the other cast members. He wasn't afraid to challenge rivals, escalate arguments, or stand his ground even when he was clearly in the wrong. And while some viewers rolled their eyes, others admired his refusal to back down. In a show full of larger-than-life characters, Jarrod was never overshadowed. But behind the villain label was a man who thrived on risk. Jarrod was a gambler by nature, not in casinos, but in life. He thrived on uncertainty, on betting when others hesitated. Sometimes it paid off, delivering hidden treasures worth thousands. Other times it backfired, leaving him with losses and regrets. But to Jarrod, that was the game. Without risk, there could be no reward. That willingness to gamble, combined with his combustible personality, made him unforgettable. Viewers may not have always liked him, but they never ignored him. And in reality TV, being unforgettable is the surest path to fame. The fall, controversies, and life after Storage Wars. When Storage Wars first aired, Jarrod Schulz was introduced to the world as the fiery half of a fan-favorite duo. Alongside Brandi Passante, he was part of the show's heartbeat, bringing both laughter and drama to the tense world of locker auctions. But reality TV fame is rarely kind, and as the seasons passed, cracks began to appear. By the time Jarrod's arc turned downward, his life was no longer defined by the thrill of bidding wars. Instead, it became defined by controversy, personal turmoil, and questions about what really happened when the cameras stopped rolling. Fame's double-edged sword. To understand Jarrod's downfall, we have to first acknowledge what fame does to people. For many reality stars, sudden exposure brings wealth, opportunity, and recognition. But it also magnifies flaws, tests relationships, and invites public scrutiny that few are prepared for. For Jarrod, fame amplified the traits that made him memorable: his temper, his stubbornness, his tendency to gamble on big risks. On television, these qualities made him compelling. Off-screen, they were less entertaining. They created friction in his business, his relationships, and ultimately, his personal life. By the mid-2010s, whispers began circulating among fans and tabloids that Jarrod and Brandi's relationship was under strain. On the show, their arguments were often playful, but viewers sensed real tension. Their dynamic, once charming, now looked increasingly volatile. The end of Jarrod and Brandi. In 2020, the speculation ended when Brandi Passante confirmed what many suspected. She and Jarrod had separated years earlier, in fact. The revelation shocked fans who had watched them for nearly a decade as one of reality TV's most iconic couples. For viewers, Jarrod and Brandi were inseparable. Their chemistry drove Storage Wars, their disagreements fueled its drama, and their shared thrift store gave it purpose. Without Brandi, Jarrod's presence felt incomplete. Without Jarrod, Brandi's resilience lost its foil. Behind the scenes, however, the split had been brewing for a long time. Fame, business pressures, and conflicting personalities created fissures that no amount of on-screen chemistry could repair. Brandi later admitted the breakup had been hard, but she focused on raising their 2 children and rebuilding her life outside of Jarrod's shadow. For Jarrod, the separation marked a turning point. It stripped him of not only a partner but also the dynamic that had defined his TV persona. On Storage Wars, Jarrod and Brandi was a package deal. Alone, Jarrod struggled to capture the same energy, and his appearances became less frequent. Controversies and legal troubles. As Jarrod's personal life unraveled, controversy soon followed. In 2021, reports surfaced that Jarrod had been arrested and charged with misdemeanor domestic violence battery following an alleged incident involving Brandi. The news spread quickly, reigniting debates about Jarrod's temper, something fans had often seen play out in heated moments on the show. While Jarrod maintained his innocence, the charges cast a long shadow over his reputation. For a reality star already struggling to stay relevant, this legal trouble was devastating. It shifted the narrative around him from the fiery gambler to the troubled ex. Fans who once found his stubbornness entertaining now saw it as potentially dangerous. The arrest tarnished his image, further complicating any chances of a television comeback. It was a classic reality TV tragedy. The very personality traits that had made him famous ultimately contributed to his fall from grace. Life after Storage Wars. So what happened to Jarrod once his time on Storage Wars effectively ended? Unlike some of his castmates, who parlayed their fame into spin-offs, businesses, or renewed careers, Jarrod faded into the background. He returned to doing what he knew best: hustling. Reports indicated he continued working in the storage and thrift business, though without the same spotlight or momentum that the show once gave him. He opened a bar in California, attempting to reinvent himself as a small business owner outside the world of auctions. For a time, the venture provided him with a new identity, but it never reached the cultural impact of his TV days. On social media, Jarrod was less visible than Brandi, who remained active and continued to build her own brand. Fans searching for updates on Jarrod found fewer glimpses into his personal life. He seemed to recede from the public eye, perhaps by choice, perhaps by necessity. For many, this was a stark contrast to the Jarrod of old, the loud, bold, defiant man who never shied away from a fight. Now he was quieter, less present, almost as if the weight of controversy had finally forced him into retreat. The what-if factor. Whenever fans discuss Jarrod Schulz, one question always arises: what if? What if Jarrod had managed his temper differently? What if he and Brandi had remained together, continuing to anchor Storage Wars as a duo? What if he had leveraged his fame into a more lasting business empire? The truth is, Jarrod had the tools to build something enduring. His charisma, his risk-taking, his instincts for value. They could have sustained a career long after the show's peak. But fame is unforgiving to those who cannot balance their public image with private discipline. In Jarrod's case, the very qualities that defined him, confidence, stubbornness, boldness, also became his undoing. Instead of evolving, he doubled down on being the same Jarrod fans had seen on screen. But reality TV fame is fleeting. Audiences demand reinvention, growth, and resilience. Without those, the spotlight eventually turns away. Lessons from Jarrod's fall. Jarrod's story is both cautionary and human. It reminds us that reality TV stars are not just characters. They are people, with flaws that do not disappear when the cameras stop rolling. For Jarrod, fame amplified his flaws until they consumed his narrative. His temper, once entertaining, became destructive. His partnership, once central to his appeal, fell apart. His legal troubles overshadowed his business ventures. Yet, there is also resilience in his story. Despite setbacks, Jarrod did not vanish completely. He continued to work to build, to carve out a life outside the glare of reality TV. It may not have been glamorous, but it was real. In that sense, Jarrod's fall is not just a tale of controversy. It is a reminder of what happens when the line between persona and person blurs too deeply. The shadow of Brandi's success, complicating Jarrod's post-Storage Wars life, was the contrast with Brandi's trajectory. While Jarrod receded, Brandi continued to appear in interviews, charity events, and updates that kept her connected with fans. She leaned into her identity as a single mother, earning respect for her resilience and strength. The comparison was unavoidable. Brandi was seen as thriving, while Jarrod was seen as struggling. This only deepened the perception of his fall. For many fans, the narrative became clear: Brandi had moved forward, while Jarrod had been left behind. Where he stands now: reputation, business, and legacy. Jarrod Schulz's story is not just about the rise and fall of a reality TV personality. It's about what happens afterward. when the cameras stop rolling, when the spotlight fades, and when a man has to figure out who he is without the script of reality television defining his every move. For Jarrod, life after Storage Wars has been quieter, more complicated, and far less glamorous. Yet, even in the shadows, his story continues to unfold. The quiet years. After his appearances on Storage Wars dwindled and his split from Brandi became public, Jarrod slipped into what fans often call his quiet years. He was no longer a regular on television, nor was he making headlines for business successes. Instead, his name popped up only occasionally, usually connected to controversy or speculation. This doesn't mean Jarrod disappeared completely. He remained in California, where he continued hustling through small businesses and ventures. But without the reach of a hit show, his work didn't carry the same visibility. For someone who once lived in front of millions, this transition was stark. Fans who once saw him every week on their screens now had to search for scraps of updates. An interview here, a social media post there, a mention in a local report. For many, Jarrod felt like a ghost of the past, still alive, still working, but no longer the larger than life figure he had been during the peak of Storage Wars. The bar owner. One of Jarrod's most notable post-TV ventures was opening a bar called the Rush Bar and Grill in California. For a while, this seemed like the perfect reinvention. Jarrod, known for his bold personality, would be in his element running a lively establishment where locals could gather. The bar gave him a new identity outside of storage lockers and thrift stores. It was a chance to show that he could build something sustainable, something rooted in his own community, rather than in the fleeting world of reality television. For a time, the bar thrived, becoming a local hangout and giving Jarrod a renewed sense of purpose. He was no longer just the guy from Storage Wars. He was a small business owner with a new dream. But like many small businesses, especially during the difficult years of economic uncertainty and the pandemic, the Rush Bar and Grill faced challenges. By the late 2010s and early 2020s, reports indicated the bar had closed, another chapter ending in Jarrod's restless search for stability. Reputation in the eyes of fans. When fans discuss Jarrod Schulz today, opinions remain divided. Some remember him fondly as the fiery wildcard of Storage Wars, the man who brought energy and drama to every bidding war. For these fans, Jarrod is part of the nostalgia of the show's golden years, forever tied to Brandi and their unforgettable chemistry. Others, however, see him through the lens of controversy. The arrest in 2021 for domestic battery, though ultimately resolved without major legal consequences, permanently tarnished his reputation. In the court of public opinion, Jarrod's temper became more than entertainment. It became a liability. This duality defines his legacy. For some, he is the unforgettable gambler who made Storage Wars exciting. For others, he is a cautionary tale of how fame and temper can destroy opportunities. Business and financial reality. It's important to remember that for reality TV stars, the money isn't always as glamorous as the fame. Unlike film stars or athletes, reality personalities often earn modest paychecks, which depend heavily on ratings and appearances. For Jarrod, Storage Wars was lucrative compared to his earlier life, but it didn't make him wealthy enough to retire comfortably. When his appearances dwindled, so did the income. His thrift store with Brandi closed years ago, his bar venture ended, and his attempts to branch out into new businesses faced mixed results. Today, Jarrod is believed to still hustle in resale, auctions, and smaller ventures, the same world that first gave him a shot. It's a return to his roots, though without the camera crews documenting every gamble and every win. This financial reality is one of the harshest parts of his story. Fame was fleeting, but bills are permanent. Jarrod, like many reality stars, had to adjust to life after the paychecks slowed, and that adjustment hasn't always been smooth. Relationships and family. Jarrod's split from Brandi not only ended a personal relationship, but also fractured the partnership that defined his TV identity. For fans, Jarrod and Brandi were inseparable. Without her, he seemed adrift. Without him, she seemed freer. Today, Brandi continues to raise their two children, focusing on her own path, while Jarrod maintains a separate life. Reports suggest that he remains involved with his kids, though the split and subsequent legal troubles complicated the public perception of his role as a father. Romantically, Jarrod has been linked to new relationships since Brandi, but none with the visibility or impact of his longtime partnership. For fans, Brandi remains the figure tied to his legacy, the person with whom his story feels most complete, even if reality tells a different tale. Legacy, what will people remember? When history remembers Storage Wars, Jarrod Schulz will always be part of the conversation. He was there from the beginning, shaping the energy of the show with his boldness and unpredictability. His dynamic with Brandi remains one of the most iconic duos in reality television. But legacy is complicated. Some will remember the entertainment he provided, others will focus on the controversies that followed. The truth is that Jarrod's story is both. He is a reminder that reality TV characters are human beings, with strengths and flaws that don't vanish when the cameras are off. His legacy, then, is not one of triumph or total failure, but of humanity. He rose, he fell, he stumbled, and he continues, imperfect, polarizing, and unforgettable, a cautionary tale of reality TV. If there is a larger lesson in Jarrod's story, it is about the fleeting nature of reality TV fame. Millions watched him, laughed at his antics, and followed his every move during the show's height. But when the spotlight shifted, Jarrod was left to face life without the cushion of celebrity. His story illustrates what happens when reality TV fame ends, the cameras move on, but life doesn't. Bills remain, businesses rise and fall, relationships shift, and personal flaws become harder to hide. Jarrod's fall from grace is not unique, but because of his fiery personality, it feels especially poignant. Where he stands now. So, what really happened to Jarrod Schulz? Today, he lives far from the limelight that once defined him. He works in small ventures, maintains a presence in California, and continues to hustle as he always has. He is no longer the star of a hit series, but he is still surviving, still finding ways to navigate life outside the lens. For fans who wonder if he'll ever return to television, the answer remains unclear. Reality TV is unpredictable, and redemption arcs are common. But Jarrod's controversies make a comeback complicated. Networks are wary of stars with reputational baggage, and audiences have mixed feelings about whether they want to see him again. For now, his story is one of quiet survival. Not glamorous, not celebrated, but still ongoing. Jarrod Schulz began as a hustler, became a star, and today lives as something in between. His reputation is scarred, his business is unstable, and his legacy complicated. But his story is far from over. At almost 103, Hollywood legends remind us of endurance. For Jarrod, at just over 40, endurance is still being tested. He may never reclaim the fame of his Storage Wars days, but he remains part of its legacy forever. The gambler, the wild card, the man who once dared to bet big in front of millions. And maybe that is Jarrod's true legacy, not perfection, not redemption, but the reminder that reality stars are human, flawed, resilient, and always fighting to survive once the spotlight moves on.